James, and I'm the book repair coordinator here at the UMass Amherst Libraries. I work with the General Circulating Collection that's housed in the Du Bois Library and the Science and Engineering Library, and that includes over 3 million books. And it's my job to help keep them in good condition so that they're here for people to use. I do that by evaluating each item that comes to me and deciding what type of treatment it needs and how we can get it back in good working order. I love my job. I love working with my hands and helping take care of the collections, and I wanted to do this so to tell all of you how you can help take care of our collections. Preservation is really important, and everyone who works here really can have a role in that. So I hope you find this interesting. So I just wanted to show you different types of damage that I see all the time, and again, when people have things at home, anything can happen. This is a great example of something that I see pretty regularly. I usually have a dog chew book in my backlog. This is particularly nasty. Speaking of critters, we have some tiny ones who are a problem here. This book has had something burrowing into it, a bug or a worm. I see a good amount of food damage, mostly, usually it's bright colored, cheesy Cheeto stuff in between pages of books. Thinking this was a grape. These are pages from a book that was found in the stacks by a student who worked here, and I don't know if he smelled something or how he found it, but he found a book in the stacks that was closed with a hamburger patty with yellow mustard in between the pages, and these are the pages. One of the most frustrating parts of my job is finding things that people have intentionally damaged. And, this is a prime example of that. I don't get this. I also see books that were used in inappropriate ways, such as this, because someone must have used this to prop a table or, I don't know, a couch or something really heavy. Something I see much more often is the old ring. This book looks fine if you went up to the stacks to find it. It's a book of poetry. But when you pull it off the shelf, this is what you have. Someone, pretty much, they stole the entire book. Now I want to show you some books that people tried to fix themselves that had problems, and people thought, oh, I'll just put some tape on that. And I see all kinds of tape, almost none of which are appropriate. And my favorite, as far as taping a torn page, that I ever saw was this, a Band-Aid. A book isn't just a solid block, it has moving parts, and understanding how they all fit together and function can really help you be more aware of potential problems when handling them. The modern case-bound or hardcover book has two main components, the text block and the case. The text block is the grouping of pages that contain the text or illustrations. Text blocks are either sewn or held together with adhesive using a variety of methods. The case contains and protects the text block. It's made up of two book boards that are made of a hard press board and a spine, which is usually made of a more flexible board. Any number of materials might hold these three pieces together. You've probably seen books covered in leather, vinyl, buckram, plastic-coated paper, or just plain paper. I want to focus on how the text block and case are brought together using the end papers and material called super or crash. The end papers are made of a heavier stock of paper than the book's pages. Each end paper has two halves, the paste down and the free end paper. The super is a strip of material usually made of fabric, but sometimes paper. The middle section of the super is stitched or adhered to the spine of the text block. The edges of the super are glued to the back of the paste down, and then the paste down is glued to the book board. On most books, you can see or feel the super through the end paper. So the end paper and the super bring the text block and case together at what is aptly called the hinge. The hinge is an area that is vulnerable to damage, especially when a book is mishandled. Hinges often become loose or tear, and eventually the text block and case may completely separate. This happens when books are leaning all the time rather than standing up straight, or when they lie on their foredge and the weight of the text block pulls the hinge apart, or if you pick up a book just by the cover and the text block isn't properly supported. This relatively new book has no super, is covered in paper, and it has an inflexible spine. It didn't stand a chance. And this brings me to judging books by their covers. And that's actually, I always say that I get paid to judge books by their covers, but I'm not looking at the content, I'm looking at the physical book. But one thing I've found is that you cannot tell if a book is strong or weak, depending on how it looks. This book is just, we've just had it, it's been in existence for 2 years. It's only 2 years old. When you look at the front, it's in pretty good shape. The corners aren't even worn out. This is a relatively new book. And it's completely, it's coming apart. This is a fail right here. All that was holding it together was this thin coating of paper cover with, like, it must have a little bit of plastic on it. And really that's about it. So this was just not meant to stay together. It's a beautiful book, nice coffee table book. It lies down very nicely. But in use in practice, especially for something in the library that many people will be using over and over, it's just not going to hold up. So this book's 2 years old. And this book is from 1895, so this has been around for quite a while. And this is a very sturdy book, very nicely built. It should last for a very long time. It's beautiful too. Now I want to talk about a big problem, a lot of damage that I see here is spine damage. That's one of the most common problems that we see. And a lot of it does come from wear and tear, and we do want people using our materials, but we also want them to handle them carefully. So spines are delicate, and when we looked at anatomy, we saw the book boards are attached just by either fabric or paper or something like that in this joint here. That is where people pull the book off the shelf. That looks like a handle, and people treat it as a handle. So now that you know some book anatomy, hopefully you can keep that in mind when pulling items off the shelf. And so this is what I see. It can start as small as this. This book is paper. And then it comes to this stage where they're hanging off sideways. And then things like this. Now this is one of those books. It has a heavy text block. It has nice glossy paper. So it's heavy. The weight of it, the weight of the book itself could have just caused this to happen as soon as someone grabbed this. This is just, again, this is just paper. So that wasn't suitable for holding this together. So that's why we need to be really careful of books in stacks. Book damage can be costly. Occasionally, most often due to mold, a book might come to me that is beyond repair and it has to be pulled from the collection. Sometimes the best solution to a problem is to send the book to a commercial binder, which can be costly, or I might be able to fix the damage myself. Here I'm doing a respine or reback, which also costs money for my time and materials. The best and most economical solution is prevention. Now that you know more about book damage and care about our collections, you may be tempted to bring me all the damaged books that you find up in the stacks. But with over 3 million books, we just can't treat all of those that need attention. So we prioritize by repairing books that are being used. Items that are returned by users or picked up in a sweep inside the libraries will get to the repair area if they are damaged. Damaged materials that are sitting in the stacks should stay there. If they're needed in the future, we can fix them at that time. Now, if you see a puddle from a leaky vent or other conditions that could damage our collections, please tell your supervisor. You're the ones who are up in the stacks, and the staff who aren't up there need your help in preventing environmental damage. Problems like leaks, food, and mold that might spread more damage really need to be addressed as quickly as possible. Now that you know how not to pull books off the shelf, let's look at some better options. There are a few different ways that I know of to remove a book from a shelf without causing damage. If you're tall enough in relation to the shelf, you can reach over the top of the book and push it out by pushing against the text block. Don't push on the case, the covers, that would strain the hinges. So pushing the text block deeper into the spine towards you shouldn't cause any damage, and you just need to push the book out far enough to grasp it by the sides where it's stronger. You can also push down on the top of the text block and use leverage to tip the book out so that you can grab it by the sides. This looks very similar to pulling on the top of the spine, which we don't want to do. So make sure you're staying clear of that vulnerable area and putting pressure on the text block only when you tip it out to grab it. A less intuitive way to remove a book is to push in the books on either side of the one that you want so that you can grab it safely. If the books are pressed together too tightly or the materials they're made of are kind of sticking together a little bit, it might help to sort of tap on the neighboring books to inch them in a little bit so you can have something to grab onto. You might find other ways to pull books depending on how the books and the shelves are arranged in any given area. For instance, if a book is taller than those around it, you might just grab it by the sides at the top where you have some clearance. Or if the shelves are packed too tightly, or you're having trouble reaching a higher shelf, it might make the most sense to remove a book that's easy to grab from anywhere else on the shelf, and then use that space to shift things around until you have enough space around the book you actually need to just reach in and take it down. You'll also come across books that are too tall for the shelves. These should be turned on their sides. Don't try to jam them in standing up if they just don't fit. When you lay a book on its edge, don't lay it on the foredge. That's the edge opposite from the spine. That seems like the best way for users because the call number label is visible. It's up. The spine is where you can see it. But it's not good for the books. Many tall books also have heavy text blocks, and when they lay on their foredge, the text block falls onto the shelf. It's suspended from the hinges, and that just pulls the hinges apart. I've seen a lot of books that are literally pulled apart by simply sitting on the shelf like that for long periods of time. So our policy is to lay tall books on their spines. This way the text block is cradled in the spine and no damage is done. We didn't always do this, so you may find areas in the library where books are on their foredges. You can leave them there. There's just too many. That would be a huge project to turn them all over. But as you're shelving yourself, certainly shelve books on their spines rather than the foredge. And as you come across an odd book here or there, certainly feel free to flip it over. So I hope you can find techniques that work for you when you're working the stacks, and that you can just create some habits. And you might even find yourself handling books differently at home or when browsing through bookstores. I just want to show you a few more things that you might see in the stacks besides your average everyday books. And one thing is boxes. This is called a phase box. It's made by our commercial binder. And this will protect the book from light, from dust, and basically we use this when there's no other way to repair the book. If the paper is very brittle, it can't be rebound, and we just want to contain everything, keep it together so people can still use it. So we will put something in a phase box like this from our bindery, or actually I can make a lighter weight phase box in-house for smaller items. And so those are two types of boxes you might see. Another solution, which really doesn't seem much of a solution, is that we tie books that again, they can't be rebound, the paper's too brittle, but in this case, the case of the book is protecting the text block pretty well. So we don't really need to contain the entire thing in a box. The case is acting in that way as far as protecting the text block. So we will put it, just tie it with linen ribbon and put it back in the stacks for people to use. And hopefully we do have a note on these items that ask that people please don't put them in a book drop, and that they're careful. In both cases, we want people to keep the pages in order and help preserve the books for the future. One problem you'll find up in the stacks is shelves that are just crammed full of books. And obviously what we want to do is, if you can, when you're shelving, do a minor shift to create space so that things are not jammed. This guy's jammed back here, and this bookend is smushed in. Something's got to give. So we'd like to get some of these books off of here, shift them up, so that this guy can come out and things aren't so squished. What happens when that happens is we end up with books that are permanently misshapen like this, which is not a good thing. It really stresses the hinges, and you can tell when books have been smushed on the shelf for way too long. So just grab whatever is easiest to pull out. Sometimes it's something that's sticking up or sticking out, so that you don't have to pull on the top like someone did here, obviously, and then straighten things out, shift what you have to create a little space so that people don't have to tug on the books to get them out. This area is jam-packed, and I have something I'd like to put away here. It's just not going to work. The solutions would be if you can do a minor shift, if there's a little space on adjacent shelves. If there's not, it isn't going to fit. So you need to bring it down to Stacks Management. It has an overflow shelf in their department, just for that kind of thing. And also this Science and Engineering Library also has an overflow truck. So if something doesn't fit, don't make it fit. The opposite problem of not enough space on a shelf is too much space. And the solution to that is bookends. Bookends are a preservation tool. It's a way of keeping books in good working order while they're sitting on the shelf, which is where many of them spend most of their time. And I see a problem here that I see regularly, and that is items that are not standing correctly on the shelf. There's been too much space on the shelf, the bookend isn't working, and they've slid down. So they've become permanently misshapen, and which, as you would imagine by now, I hope you'd know, that it's the hinges that get damaged here, and that's very typical of when I see that shape. I know that the hinges are gone. So what we need to do is straighten this up and use this bookend correctly. This bookend is a good tall bookend. Sometimes I see shorter ones on these taller books that won't work. But it should work as long as we place it snug underneath, not pushing it in too far. Push things back so they don't come off the shelves. And that's much better. So bookends are important. If you see areas without them, ask your supervisor, make sure you can get one, and make sure that they're working properly, that everything is standing straight, and that the weight of the books is actually holding the bookend in place. And hopefully that will help preserve them. We're here in Stacks Management, where books that come into the library, when they're returned, they end up coming down here. Probably many of the people I really want to talk to here are people who work in this department who are handling the books so much. In Stacks Management, there is a repair shelf for damaged books and also an overflow shelf. So when you are in the stacks and there's absolutely no space for something without shifting, you need to bring it down here. And the Science and Engineering Library also has an overflow shelf and a repair shelf for items that will end up coming to me. I want to talk a little bit about book trucks, and this is where a lot of items are going on and off of trucks, on and off of shelves. And one thing to keep in mind when you're driving a truck around is to make sure to try to keep the books towards the center of the truck in this way, so that it's not heavy on one side or the other, so you don't dump a truck, which can happen, especially going on and off the elevators. And another problem that happens with trucks, generally you may go up to the stacks with a full truck, and as you're shelving, you're taking books off, so you end up with space. And as we just talked about, space can be a problem in the stacks. It can be a problem here as well, because you probably wouldn't have a bookend with you. One solution would be to actually use the actual books themselves to shore up the remaining books. So now that you've seen how books are put together and different ways they can be damaged, I hope you can use all that information to help you form new habits and take better care of our collections. Wear and tear happens, but we've also seen that once a book goes out of the library, there's really not much we can do about, we don't have a lot of control over what happens to it. But when it comes back, it comes into a book drop, and then someone takes it from the book drop, puts it on a truck, takes it to stacks management, sorts it by call number onto a shelf, and then from that shelf it goes back onto another truck to go to the appropriate floor to be shelved where it belongs, where someone can find it later. That's a lot of action. That's a lot of handling by a lot of different people. So if all of those people know what they're doing, know how to take care of the books, know how to handle them properly, that can go a really long way into preserving our collections and keeping them here for generations to come. Some have been here for many generations of students already, but if everyone who works here knows how to handle them correctly and thinks about what they're doing, you can have a part in preserving our collections, and I don't know, I think that's pretty cool. So thanks for listening.